This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Walk the Talk with Nadia Dashti-Edwards. My name is Alana Kazihan, and I lead, together with Regina, the content team at EWPN. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items. If you participated in one of our webinars before, you know the housekeeping rules, but essentially, please turn off your camera so that the speaker has the spotlight, and put yourself on mute. Everyone is in listen-only mode while Nadia is presenting, and in the end of her presentation, you can ask her questions. Actually, you can submit the questions throughout the presentation and Nadia's speech, and either you can unmute yourself and ask the question or submit it in the chat box. If you are uncomfortable, you can submit the question to me and I'll read it out for you. And the session will be recorded, and we'll be sending you the link of the recording within 48 hours with a summary of the webinar in case you have to leave earlier or you would like to forward this webinar to anyone. For those of you new to European Women in Payments Network, EWPN is a network for women in FinTech in Europe. And we focus on bringing women in payments together to learn about issues and trends and network with peers. And we celebrate women's achievements all throughout the FinTech industry. And for more information, please go to our website, www.ewpn.eu. And now I would like to present to you Nadia Dashti-Edwards. Nadia co-founded the Harrington Starr Group in 2010. Which has grown into the leading FinTech recruiter based in London and with offices in New York. In 17 years in the FST sector, she has been responsible for helping over 2,000 people find jobs and has grown from a trainee to a managing director of a 25 million turnover business. She runs her own successful Women of FinTech podcast series. Really highly recommended. If you have time and would like to listen to some interesting interviews, please listen to Nadia's podcasts. And the podcasts celebrate and showcase successes of over 100 women that she has interviewed. So women in the positions of leadership within the FinTech community. She has also created a groundbreaking groundbreaking podcast series exploring the maternity and paternity of FinTech stories, and recently created the Diversity and Inclusion Program, HSRAE, Success is Inclusion, as well as the Step Forward program helping companies create workflows and operational plans to drive towards gender equality and workplace inclusion. Nadia has created numerous processes that are known in the financial services talent attraction industry that allow Harrington Starr Group consultants to go an extra mile for their candidates when they represent them for jobs. She wants hiring managers to invest in their staff and promotes retaining staff throughout the industry to allow for people to onboard smoothly and progress quickly. She's also launched a successful campaign called the 17% list. More on that, I think, in Nadia's presentation, which drives real change fast to affect the gender imbalance in the technology space. And she's currently writing a book. So we are very lucky to have Nadia before she launches her book. The book will be launched through Palgrave Macmillan called The FinTech Women Walk the Talk, Driving Change for Workplace Gender Equality. Ultimately, Nadia believes in people becoming the best they can. And she knows awareness, acknowledgement, and action is needed to drive the 3 A's approach. Welcome, Nadia.
Wow, thank you very much. That's such a lovely introduction. I'm just going to share my screen so I can get the presentation.
Sure.
But as I'm working out how to do that, I just want to say hi to everybody. I really, really appreciate you all signing up to this today, and I'm really excited to be able to talk you through my presentation, which is called Walk the Talk. So just to give a little bit more detail into why I'm here today and what I'm going to be sharing, I do need to talk about my podcast, I do need to talk about the book, and I do need to talk about my career. And I want to just show you all that if we are going to, as an industry, really genuinely affect the gender imbalance that we face, there's a number of things that we need to do. I do not proclaim to be the guru or the person that has the magic wand that will give the one solution. I think there are many solutions that we all need to have our role and our place to make sure that change happens. I'm not necessarily interested in talking about why there's a gender imbalance or trying to persuade people that we need to have an inclusive society and an inclusive workplace. I'm interested in talking to all the people that understand that inclusion is inextricably linked to profits. Inclusion will absolutely ensure the success of your business. Inclusion is the right thing to do. And when people think like that, they then ask, how do we do it? And this is where I think there's a massive void in the marketplace, where people have spoken a lot about these subjects around inclusion, around gender equality within the FinTech, payments, tech, and financial services space. But actually, a lot of people get stuck on what is the right thing to do? What's the first thing to do? What's right for your business to do? And where can you get the dreaded quick wins? Because actually, it's not necessarily about the quick wins. It's about integrating into DNA of companies that everybody who is different will bring a strength and a wonderful new point of view. So I really, really appreciate everybody that's joined in to listen to me today, because I appreciate, I'm a recruiter of 17, 18 years within the industry. Recruitment itself is an industry that a lot of people look at with skepticism. And as I talk you through this presentation, what I want to show is actually I have treated this industry with so much respect over the last 17, 18 years. I've learned so much from many different managers as they've hired. I've learned so much from managers as they've fired, what's made them decide to promote people, and how applicants have decided to join companies. So what I bring to you today is my Walk the Talk presentation, because this is a hashtag of mine, Walk the Talk, and it's all about how do we turn that talk and that want and that desire into action so we can get the results that we so desperately need. So I'm just going to give a very quick introduction. Alana, you did a great job at explaining who we are at Harrington Starr. I'm one of the founders of Harrington Starr. We are a recruitment agency that started in 2010 in the June, so we're knocking on the door of 11 years old. When we first started, there were 3 of us, and we said to each other, what are we going to do to make sure that we are a different recruiter, that we're not just the same as everybody else? And we decided that we were going to grow our business by building a community and by having relationships with people when they weren't looking for work or when they weren't looking to find somebody to fill a vacancy. And if we were going to build those relationships that way, we needed to genuinely add value and understand our marketplace. So you can imagine this is really where I came into my own and started to talk to people about inclusion. But back in 2010, as you all know, no one spoke about diversity the way that we do now. It wasn't even a word that was used. We were coming out of the recession. No one really spoke about inclusion either. But I started being much more vocal about what I was seeing in the industry and how hiring managers were making their decisions on who to hire, who to fire, and who to promote. And when I say fire, make redundant, however you want to say it. So for us as a business, when we set up, we knew we didn't want to just build relationships when people were looking. We wanted to add value to people. We wanted to build trust. So that's where it initially came from. Me and my mission, as I've been building this community, as you can see from this page, I've done so many different things to really reach out and network across the community. And I've been so lucky to have and build such wonderful relationships. My Women of FinTech podcast series that Alana mentioned, Regina herself was one of the first people that I interviewed. And actually, the last podcast that I've just recorded is to celebrate a research project of the EWPN. So I'm definitely a big fan of the network and love to support and love how you've all supported me back as well. But over the years, what I've really focused on doing is giving back to the community, but also paying it forward. And this is a concept that I really believe in. So I have been doing events, I've been running roundtables, I've been recording podcasts, video interviews, speaking for the Financial Times about how we can bring more people to this industry and more people of different backgrounds, which I think is really key. So my mission isn't to say let's have 30% parity of genders within the fintech, payments, technology and financial services workplace. That's not my mission. It's 50-50. It's absolute representation of what we have in society. And even though a lot of people say that's a big goal and, you know, how are we going to overhit that? I think that we all need to have that as a goal because that is reflection of society. And I will do everything I can to help the people that I work with and to build a network and build more support around that until that day comes. And I believe that it will do. And I think in all the things that I've done is I've been learning. Every day I've been learning so that I can give answers to the how and really bring people along on the movement so that we can all clearly, when we listen to a talk like this, say, right, this is the one thing I'm going to take away and I'm going to implement that in my team, in my sector, in my company. Even if it's a very small team, it's so important that we take these things away and we all understand what the mission is. So again, a bit more about Harrington Starr, just to understand the visibility. So as Alana said, you know, I've affected over 2,000 people's lives in terms of finding them roles during my career, but I've affected so much more than that as well. And I think it's not just about what I've affected, it's about what I've learned. So every single day, I'll probably talk to 10 to 15 people within the industry, within payments tech or fintech or financial services institutions. And I will learn about how they are making their decisions. I will learn about where D&I or diversity, equity and inclusion sits on their agenda. If it's right in the middle of the DNA of their business, or if it's just a little line at the end of a board meeting because they think it's the right thing to do. Whether it's very important to their marketing department that they get put forward for awards, or whether they are deciding that they are going to change their people policies and procedures internally. So it's really very interesting what I learn day in, day out. And if you then equate that to how many people I speak to in a week, how many people I speak to in a month, how many people I speak to in a year, I am in such a privileged position of visibility. I see the good, I see the bad, and I see the ugly. And I'm very lucky to be able to have conversations with people about what compensation looks like in their business, what composition looks like in their board, how their board are paid. I'm aware of gender pay gaps because I ask questions, and I help people get aware about that as well. I'm aware of who gets overlooked for promotions because they didn't keep putting their hand up. This visibility has allowed for me to have real conversations with people who are in decision-making powers within businesses to allow for more change to happen. And that's what I want to be talking about today. So this statistic here of 17% is incredibly important because it's something that has driven many parts of the work that I do. So I'll tell you a story. Last year in April, actually last year tomorrow, I gave birth to a little baby girl. And I've always been incredibly passionate about the gender imbalance and affecting it. But nothing made me more passionate than looking at her and thinking, if in 20 years' time we still haven't affected this gender imbalance, I have given her a disservice, but also I've given this market a disservice, since this is my mission to change it. And I did more research, and what I hadn't realised before is in the UK today, and I know many of you in Europe, I think it's important to have a look at your numbers and your statistics, but in the UK today, of all the technology roles, This is across payments, fintech, financial services, every industry, across all the technology roles. Only 17% of them are made up by women. The real key point to this for me is that is the same percentage as the year before, the year before that, the year before that, and the year before that. And that to me is the shocking statistic, that we are not moving things further forward. And I think that it's incredibly important that each of us have a look at what actually our statistics are, because it's very easy over the past 4 or 5 years for us to say things are improving because we're talking about it more. For us to say things are improving because we are celebrating companies winning awards for their inclusion policies. But how well are we doing if we're not attracting more women to this industry? And how are we getting anywhere further on our mission if we're not getting that bit right? So I wanted just to have this visualization here for you to really see how much of a disparity we're working on and what we need to work towards. And I think the biggest part of this for me is openness and honesty, because a lot of companies and a lot of people in hiring positions, they say this is really important to us, but they don't know their numbers, and they don't know exactly what they need to do to make the change happen. So what we're going to be talking about today is how we move that needle, how we ensure that we have more change actually happening and all of us can be involved in the actions that need to happen, because we can talk about it only so much, but it's about how we shift that needle forward. So talking about how we walk the talk, my main focus of this is that everybody must be involved. And I think that there's been too many instances where we have women talking to women about how we make changes happen. And I think it's incredibly important that we realize that male allies need to be empowered as well to help us on our mission to address the gender imbalance. And I know that there's going to be questions around exactly how they can do that, but I think it's incredibly important that we make that first step around authenticity and around confidence and around encouragement, that this is not a woman-only movement, this is an everybody movement. One of the people that I respect dearly within the industry, he said to me a beautiful phrase, which was, inclusion is about including everybody. Inclusion isn't only about listening to the minority, it is about listening to the majority too, because we all need to be on the journey together, which I felt was really, really important and something that I wanted to talk about first, because too many times have I seen businesses within our industry focus on putting the pressure on the minority and only asking the minority and thinking the minority is going to have to bear that weight to change the world. We all need to be on this movement, and we need to make the correlation between supporting every minority, but understanding that that makes the majority so much stronger. So the majority needs to get involved with every single minority and understand exactly what their experience is and their perspective is, which is what I will talk about more within these 8 steps. So the first step that I really want to talk about is, what can you see? What is your visibility? In the UK today, it's 17% that is the gender imbalance. What is it in your country? What is it within your company? What is it within your team? Now, the big thing that I want to do here is demystify perceptions. So I will say a big problem that I have, and this isn't just in the UK, this is across Europe, because I speak to, and in the States, I speak to lots of people worldwide, is I often get this phrase: we would have loved to have hired a woman within technology, but none of them exist, so we had to hire a man. This to me is one of the most accepted biases that we have in society today, because that implies that women in technology only make up 1%. At the moment in the UK, they make up 17%. It's a conversation I've had many times with Regina about look harder, like just look harder. And I think that the recruitment industry has a huge responsibility to make your looking harder easier. So I'll talk through what my 17% list proposition is now. And what I decided over the course of last summer is I wanted to make sure that people could see the 17% of the industry that are women. I wanted to debunk the myths that women don't exist in technology. And what I've done in the UK, I've started off in the UK and in London, but I am going to expand this, is in the last 3-4 months, I've signed up over 120 financial services, fintech and payments companies to what I call is my 17% list. And every 2 weeks, I share with them and I give them visibility of the female technology talent that's looking for work in the UK today. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to turn recruitment on its head, because the way that people have traditionally hired and the way that I'm sure many of your businesses hire is you have a vacancy, you have a particular need, you advertise for that vacancy, you fill that vacancy. We have not been adaptable, agile, or innovative in recruitment for the past 30 years by doing it in that process. And what I'm actually trying to do is turn that completely on its head and say, I understand your business, I know the sorts of technologies that you look for, these are the sorts of people, these are the sorts of women with those technologies, what role could you create for her? Now, you all can imagine, being from this industry, that in theory, that sounds wonderful because it's agile, innovative, and it's different. However, in practice, maybe we're not as agile as we all say we are, because some businesses, this blows their brain. However, the 120 plus on my list, it doesn't blow theirs. And what's happened in the last 90 days is over 40 women have been represented to different companies, and we've now hit 20 of them receiving a role creation off the back of it, because these companies are being agile enough to make a change happen. So what can you see, I think, is incredibly important. If you cannot see female talent, doesn't mean that it's not out there. It is. We need to work on it, but we need to make sure that you are demanding with your recruitment partners, you are demanding with your networks, you are demanding with your communities, so that we can turn our talk into action and help these women be more visible in the marketplace. So incredibly important. The second thing is attractive positioning. So I think it's incredibly important that we are all doing our best to change the perception of this industry. So it wasn't too many years ago that we all watched the film The Wolf of Wall Street. It wasn't too many years ago that we all saw the book City Boy, followed by the book City Girl. In common media, the perception of the financial services, fintech, payments, and technology industry, it's not great across common media. It's actually really rare for anyone outside our industry to understand that our businesses are mission-led, purpose-built, value-based businesses. And a lot of the businesses are looking to democratize money. A lot of businesses are trying to serve the underserved. These things are not widely understood outside of our community. We understand it internally, but they're not understood, they're not listened to, they're not explained to people outside of our community. So I cannot stress more of how important I think that we are actually focusing on how we represent ourselves externally. I think it's so important. I do lots of work going and speaking to different universities across the UK and Europe. At the moment, it's all through webinar, but that's fine. I used to go face to face, and I have found it super helpful, because I know that because of my talks and because of what I'm telling them about the fintech, payments and tech community, actually we're having people saying, oh, maybe that is the sort of businesses that I'd like to be involved in. And I think all of us have a responsibility to it. It's not a quick turnaround, it's not a quick win, but where do we expect ourselves to be in 5 years' time if we can't invest into the next generation today? So anyone in your business, any colleague you know, any person that you know that's saying, I'm talking at schools, or I'm talking at universities, or I'm building a community to raise awareness of crypto, or to teach people about digital currencies, or whatever it may be, I think these are wonderful things, because it changes our vernacular. too many people in our industry say, oh, I don't know why they're not interested in fintech. I don't know why they don't understand it. That's not the point. It's why aren't we attractive to the people outside? And we have to show them the good side to us, because in social media, definitely the good side isn't shown enough. And I think that communities like EWPN are doing brilliant work to share and to shout about it loud and proud of who we are and what we are and what we can be and what someone can be with us. But we all need to work on this to ensure that we're moving it forward. Another thing that I think is incredibly important is listening and acting. So I'll explain exactly where this came from. In our industries, if we are going to ensure that we have environments that are inclusive, environments that people are going to want to join, and environments that are attractive, that when we have the visibility of women or minorities and we want to attract them to it, we need to ensure that the environment is right for it. Because too many businesses, again, all they say to me is, oh, we would like to hire more women because we don't have a good gender balance. And I'm like, okay, so talk to me about your culture, talk to me about your environment. Well, what do you need to know? I said, okay, so I need to understand how many people are in your board meeting. When you do have a general meeting, how easy is it for someone to put their hand up and make a contribution? If someone disagrees with a manager, is that spurned or is that encouraged? Do we have diversity of thought? Do we have diversity of opinion? And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that too many people within businesses, when they say we'd like people of different backgrounds, different thoughts, different opinions, they're actually not ready for it, because instead of listening, they listen and rebut, which is one of my biggest problems. And I'll give you an example. Someone is the victim of unconscious bias in a board meeting, let's say. That person goes and speaks to a C-level member of staff and says, I was unhappy with how I was spoken to in that meeting. I feel that I'm the victim of some bias here, and I'd like it to be addressed. The biggest challenge I think we face in that is there are far too many managers that will excuse that situation. They'll make excuses for the person who was biased. They'll say why it happened. And they will actually try and make that individual feel like they're making the problem bigger than what it is, rather than addressing it. Now, I'm bringing up this as an example because if we want to build psychological safety into environments so that we can attract people, that we can retain people, that we can have a truly inclusive environment, any time that there's a problem, it needs to be handled and it needs to be acted upon. And people need to feel like they trust the environment to give more trust into the environment. So listening and acting, to me, is one of the biggest things that anybody can do. It doesn't need to be a manager. It can be that you've witnessed some bias yourself and you went and you did something about it. But confidence comes with what we witness, not anymore with what we're told is going to be okay. Too many times, people have been assured that things will be done about something, and it hasn't been. So listening and acting is so important. And some really nice examples of this to bring to life within your business that I've seen. There's been a number of cultural days that people have brought into businesses, especially in lockdown. Recipe days where people are talking about traditional recipes, who made them that first recipe. They've given some background to who they are. Businesses are bringing in at the beginning of every meeting, of every general meeting that they have, for somebody to talk about where they've been diversity brave, or where they felt that they were made vulnerable over who they are and how they got over that situation. Storytelling, sharing, creating a safe environment that people from different backgrounds, different stories, different experiences will have their opinions heard. And not only are they heard, but we're going to do something about it to make it better. Repeating this again and again and again will build psychological safety, rather than just telling people, give me some feedback, fill in this survey and we'll do something about it. It's not the way. The way is listening, not rebutting, but acting. And I'm really passionate about this point. Key players, really important. So everyone will have heard this one before around, if you want to have a naturally, authentically, real, inclusive environment, you need to ensure that you've got C-level members of staff that sponsor that. And I think that that's a really, really key point. But too many times have I seen over the past few years that you have people of different backgrounds in the leadership meetings, but they don't have a voice at that table. And I think it's incredibly important that when you know that there are different people coming into the room, that each of us have the responsibility to encourage their voice to be heard. Because too many times has it happened where we sit there, we witness something we don't like, and we leave the room and that's it. And I think it's incredibly important that all of us are understanding that different people, different opinions, the key players that come in must be given their voice to be able to make the difference. And of course, this can be very hard when you're surrounded by senior people, and there is only so much that you can do. But all of us deserve to give this movement our voice and ensure that we support our key players as well. This concept of triple jumpers is something that I want to share with you all, and it's a concept that I've created. I think, again, it's a very important point for how we are going to ensure that we all walk the talk for this gender imbalance, and we create gender equality within our businesses. And this is about completely changing the way you think when you are trying to attract people to the industry. So over the past 17, 18 years, I have heard so many times, we would like people from this university, that university, the other. We need them to have 15 years worth of experience in a technology that's only been around for 3 years, this sort of stuff. And I think we need to open our eyes to actually what we're trying to do here. Why do we want to have a more inclusive environment? Why do we want to have a gender balanced environment? It's because we want to make our businesses stronger, more sustainable, and more customer focused, because 50% of the world is the other gender. And I think it's so key that we are able to disembark from our traditional ways of identifying people. And this concept of triple jumpers comes from another industry. So the academic and teaching industry here in the UK, they will invest in hiring people who have become managers in other industries. And I'll give you an example. There's someone that I know incredibly well. She used to run Topshop. It's a huge chain here in the UK. She used to run the Topshop Canary Wharf and Tottenham Court Road branches, the two biggest clothing shops in the UK at the time. She decided she wanted to leave that job, a very high-powered job. She wanted to leave it and retrain as a teacher. And there was a teaching program that allowed her to retrain and within 18 months become a deputy headmistress of a school. And I found this concept really interesting, because imagine if we looked to other industries and identified leaders with different ways of thinking, diversity of thought, different perceptions of how we run a payments business. They are the sort of people that would say, why do you do it that way? How come you do it that way? Why don't we try a different way and make our businesses more sturdy and stable? How about we take leaders from other industries and we train them we hop, skip and jump. We train them into technology. We train them into financial services technology, and then we allow them to utilize their management capability from their previous careers. And why can't we work out an 18-month, 2-year course that could do this? And actually, to answer that, there are companies, there are non-profit organizations, there are communities that are cropping up all over that are doing exactly that. But what we need is to instill confidence into our people and our companies that this is an option that we can do, because it's different. And however much people want to solve this problem, they are afraid of what different opportunities are. So with that in mind, a very, very clear one for me. We have to call a day on the gender pay gap, full stop. I think that we've spoken about this long enough. Here in the UK, I'm sure you all know, at the beginning of the pandemic, the UK government decided to abandon the gender pay gap, which, to be really honest, obviously infuriated me. But our gender pay gap here in the UK only assesses companies of 250 people and above. You can imagine in this industry how many companies are below 250 people that can get away with anything they want to get away with and actually don't look at what they're doing. And more infuriating than that, this year the gender pay gap report's been pushed back yet again. And for some reason, the UK government seems to think that that's the way we solve the COVID problem. It's beyond me, but actually what I've been doing over the past year is really calling to action to people to say, how can we ensure that companies take responsibility of this? And one of the really easy things that all of us can do is simply go back to our managers, go back to our team leads, go back to our HR and say, what's our gender pay gap? Just having that conversation. And on International Women's Day, this is all I spoke about. I just said, everybody, stop saying like congratulations, International Women's Day. Just go and ask someone in your business, what's our gender pay gap and what are we going to do about it? And I think actually we can all, if we all start doing this, we can make a difference. And the wonderful thing that I got after International Women's Day was that so many people came back to me and said they're having this conversation. They've seen their report, they're having a meeting to work out what to do next. And I think that's so empowering because that's all I ask for. Let's all get involved and let's all push the action forward. In terms of levelling the playing field, I think there's a number of things that we've got to address. I think that across Europe, you are so much better than we are here in the UK with how we handle our maternity and our paternity leave. Here in the UK, we've still got a huge problem with the maternity penalty or the motherhood penalty, where we actually have to handle how middle management hire, promote, believe in their staff, give credit to their staff, especially their women, especially when they're around the age that people perceive for them to go off and have children. And I think that this is where unconscious bias training, where one-off trainings needs to have more of an effect, more follow-up, and turn the policy into procedure, and that procedure has to be constantly checked, because essentially we need to ensure that we're not only attracting more women to this industry, but we are hiring, promoting, retaining more women. And there is no point any company saying, oh, we'd like to hire more women, but they don't have a good maternity or paternity program. They're not thinking about shared paternity leave. Other things that are important. I think every business should have a bias champion. A bias champion is someone that you feel psychologically safe to go and talk to when you've witnessed a problem, when you've witnessed something that needs to be listened to and acted upon. I think businesses need to tackle that gender pay gap and tackle it quickly. I think businesses need to ensure that that psychological safety is built in by having different systems in place, such as the cultural days, such as the recipe days that I spoke about, such as team events where you are genuinely encouraging people to share who they are within the business, and celebrating differences within that business, and making sure that everybody understands that actually we want to hear your opinion. If you don't agree with me, that's great. I recorded a fantastic podcast with a lady called Emmanuelle Massey, who works for Schroders, the chief risk officer. And she said to me that every time that she has anyone in her team, she said, you're supposed to argue with me. I want to hear your opinion. I want to know your side of what I've just said. I don't think you either understand it or I don't think you agree with me, so I want you to tell me, and I'm not going to move until you do. And she said, that's how I create psychological safety. And now she's got people who share wonderful new insights, wonderful opinions, and things that she would never have thought of. And I think that's an important one to share, because we can't just say, feel safe in this environment. We've got to make people safe in this environment. And my final point of Walk the Talk, we are all different. This year, we have all gone through the struggles of the pandemic. And I never want to celebrate anything about the pandemic, but I will say that I think within our industry, we have been incredibly lucky and in a privileged position that people still need to pay for things. People still need financial services technology. And since the premise of what we're doing is getting money out to the masses, is making it easier for people to reach their money. Actually, we've learned a lot through this time. We've learned about our resilience. We've learned about our people. We've learned about humanity within our businesses. We have come a long way to recognize that we're going to go through a problem around, or we are going through big problems around mental health. But we are raising the awareness of that and doing things about it now. But more importantly, as we slowly but surely are brought back into our working environments, I think it will be very important that we remember there are some people who do work brilliantly at home. There are flexible hours that work much better for certain individuals. There are different situations that people have within their home lives, within their personal lives, within who they are as a character, that actually, because they've been given the flexibility to do things differently, they've been able to grow and actually get stronger throughout this time. It's so important we remember that as we go back, because I've seen many CEOs of many businesses just talk about productivity and how they relate that to being back in the office. And if we take ourselves back to a year ago, there was a huge debate around productivity and presenteeism. And we've got to ensure that we remember the lessons of this year, and we remember that everyone's different, and that in everyone's different way, they can be part of this movement. So for me, these are a large number of the challenges that we need to tackle. But what I would love for everybody who signed in today, just to have a think, what's the one challenge that you'd want to tackle based on what I've said today? And wouldn't that be great if you could take that back to your teams and turn it into a reality? So thank you, everybody. I've really enjoyed talking to you all. I welcome questions, and I hope that you found that helpful.
Thank you so much, Nadia. So we actually have already quite a few questions, and I don't want to take up time with my questions, so I'll let the participants' questions, I'll read them out for you. So how do you make people conscious of their unconscious bias and get them to do something about it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because it's something that I face within my business day in, day out. So actually, and you'll hear me say psychological safety a lot through the answer to this, I think that everyone always talks about unconscious bias training. I don't support unconscious bias training on its own. I think it needs a whole program afterwards, which involves psychological safety of the people that you know have the bias and are exhibiting that bias, and actually making them feel comfortable that you are going to say to them, hey, you've just done that again. Did you notice you did that? And not in a combative way, not in an aggressive way, because actually what I give to this industry is that I think the real minority are the people that do this on purpose and are malicious. I think the biggest problem is that we actually have a load of really good people who just don't realize what they're doing. They've never been educated before. In their entire lives, they've never had to deal with different scares them. So we've got to bring safety to those people as well, so that they know that if they're stepping out of line, that they're going to be called up on it. And this is what I mean. It's not just about that one bit of training. This is about instilling it into the DNA of everybody, to the point where that person can almost become their own champion, and they'll suddenly start to realize, wait a second, I've just made that assumption in my mind, and then they're saying it because you've made them feel comfortable to learn and to be on board on this mission.
Right. Thank you so much. It's a very good point. I absolutely agree with you. Another question is it possible to change startup culture so it supports women who also work a second shift after their paid workday is over? That's been so common throughout this whole period of lockdown.
I totally I really appreciate that question, because as a new mother, over lockdown myself, I really found myself in this sort of second shift, and the Sheryl Sandberg of the double shift. When's it going to stop? I think that some startups are doing very well on this, where they are doing everything they can to support in terms of sitting down with people and saying, what is it that you need? What is your home life looking like right now? How can we build it for you? What I found really interesting was that I was on a call probably about 3 weeks ago with a financial technology vendor, and she was asking me about my situation And I'd said, do you know what, I'm a bit worried about when, look, my baby's only going to be 1 tomorrow, but I said to her, I'm a bit worried about what's going to happen when she has to go to school, because I want to pick her up from school and I'd want to take her to school. And this woman said, wow, I've never thought about it like that for the working mothers and the working fathers here. I've always thought that we'd just work around that. I didn't realize they actually wanted to do that. She took it away, and a week later she called me and she said, oh, I just want to let you know I've had some time, I've booked in some time to speak to the parents because I want to ask them about what it is that they want to do when we do return to work. And I thought that was brilliant. So it's not everyone's going to be right with this. There are so many startups that don't know what they're doing and would refuse to acknowledge that. But this is the movement. We've got to open people's eyes up that if they want inclusion, if they want to address the gender imbalance, these are the conversations they need to be having. We need to encourage that.
Right. So it can be a small step, but it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And we have one more question from Esther. Closing the gender gap is a hot topic, but how to close it really? It's not a one-time exercise, as we have seen with companies that have tried to close it. It is how the system is set up.
Yeah, it's hard, this one. So the most beautiful answer to this I saw with a company who's a spread betting exchange. And 3 years ago, they just decided we're going to go fully transparent with our salaries. And they said, look, it was tough because, you know, we had to do quite a lot of changes. When they hire, they do find it difficult because they can't have anyone that's over. You know, if they want to hire somebody and at another company they're going to get 10K more, but at their company, like, they can't break the evenness, it's difficult. But they made that decision and they're all the better for it. And actually, I did some auditing with this company. Their retention of their staff is so much better than other companies, that people have stayed with them. But this is a bold move. And when I've said this to many, many CEOs, whether it's startups, whether it's larger organizations, I have hit objections because they know that they've got some people on more money because they demanded it and others on less because they didn't demand it. So how do we close it? The small thing I'm doing right now, which I think I'm making some headway on, is I'm educating a lot of the hiring managers that I speak to stop asking what someone's currently earning, but pay them what they think they are worth. Because I saw a couple of years ago, I was really shocked. I had the profile of a woman who had a PhD, 3 masters, 7 years worth of experience working within payments, a highly technical woman. And if I'd looked at that CV, and I thought to myself, that this woman is going to be on 90 to 95K. That's what I thought to myself, having worked in the industry as long as I have. When I found out how much she was on, I was truly upset. She was on 57K. And I thought to myself, if she was a man, there's no way that she'd be on that. So when the company that we put her forward for asked us what she's on, I said, I know in the UK this is a normal thing they always ask. I said, I'm not going to tell you because I want you to pay her what you think she's worth and how she'd sit within your team. And that was a great success story, that one. But I've seen it again and again and again. So what I do now is in closing this gender pay gap, what I'm trying to do is closing the speed in which the gap is growing, because I feel like it is. I'm trying to just slow that down and stop this. But really, we need governmental input on this, which we're not getting in the UK. And we really need to get managers within businesses, CEOs within businesses, understanding that without inclusion, your business is not going to be as successful as it can be. And if we can't make that connection, this is a very difficult one to get right.
Right. Thank you for bringing this up. We have another question. Recruiting women into tech roles from tech roles elsewhere is good for the recruiting company, but doesn't solve the industry problem. What are your thoughts on how to encourage more women into technology roles in the first place? I think you touched on that in your presentation slightly.
Yeah, so my triple jumping answer is very much about this, and this is why I'm going to universities, why I partnered with the Financial Times here in the UK to encourage. We did a series of videos to encourage women from outside technology altogether to come into technology. So for me, this is about attractive positioning, and this is why I do as much as I do with schools, universities, and lots of different companies that are non-profit organisations to change the perception of technology and the industry. And this is what I'm talking about when I say, you know, we don't want people thinking that financial services, technology, or payments is like the Wolf of Wall Street. No one's going to want to join that. We've got to be showing people that we are mission-led businesses. And a big thing that I'm doing at the moment, you touched upon it in my introduction, because I've now interviewed over 150 women within the fintech and payment space about their roles, their careers, why they joined technology. I'm writing a book about it. And one of the big sections is I'm saying to people that actually there are so many women that I've interviewed who are C-level leadership within this space that actually didn't come from traditional technology backgrounds, and they are now women of STEM. And I think that perception is a big one I'm trying to debunk. So I'm writing this book. I'm 2/3 of the way through it. It will be published in January. And what I'm doing in this book is celebrating the women plus the allies of this industry to showcase to other industries that fintech and financial services and technology is an industry that women are accepted, welcomed, and will be looked after and invested in. And that is about changing the world rather than just doing a bit of a recruitment job. So I hope that gives you the answer, David, but I'd be really, really happy to expand on that as well if you need me to.
Thank you so much for your answer. Thank you for everything also you're doing, because you really are championing it. And I think you're right. If every single one of us does just one little bit, whatever it is from those points that you have mentioned today, we can definitely see things changing. If there are no more questions, just being conscious of the time, you can still submit your last-minute questions. I've decided I will send my questions to Nadia privately, because I definitely want to chat more to you about that. And really, congratulations on the book. Really looking forward to reading it. And thank you so much today for your time. Thank you, everybody, also for joining this webinar today. And we will be sending you the links of the recording. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to Nadia directly via LinkedIn, if that's okay, Nadia. And yeah. You can reach the EWPN content team by contacting us under our email, content@ewpn.eu. Our next event will be held on the 5th of May, and the topic is female finance and figures. For more details, you can visit our LinkedIn page or our website. If there's no more questions, we will close off today, and really, really enjoyed having you, Nadia. Thank you so much, and looking forward to listening to your podcasts, and keep doing the great work you're doing.
Thank you so much, everybody. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.